Hello team and welcome back to Winners and Losers, where we break down the latest and greatest Premier League action. Joining me today is your Football Daily's finest, it's Dougie Critchley. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Yeah, I had a pretty momentous weekend. I actually got engaged, which is very, very exciting. Long overdue.
In the comments.
Thank you very much. Yeah, long overdue. But yeah, a thrilling moment, pretty nerve-wracking, but got it done. How are you, Chris?
I'm wonderful. If you're happy, if Grace is happy, I'm happy. And as always, we'll be dividing this show into two parts, so make sure you stay tuned. A little bit later, we'll be touching upon Graham Potter's Blues. Conversely to Dukes, he's a very unhappy bloke at current. However, back to our winners, and this week it's going to be Brentford, who are unbeaten in 10 Premier League games, consolidating their position of 8th in the table, following that valiant 1-1 draw with table toppers Arsenal. Is worth stressing, result of the week does go to Leicester. Shout out Pappy Mendy for that finish. But we have to put some shine on Brentford's consistency, let's say. And it also gives us an opportunity to unpack Arsenal's recent blip in form. So, Duke, let's split our focus. Part 1, what did Thomas Frank's men do so well? Part 2, where are Arteta's men falling short in recent weeks? After all, that is 0 wins now in 3 games across all competitions for Arteta's men. And it means if City triumph on Wednesday, that the citizens will usurp them in the league table for the first time in quite some time on goal difference. So squeaky bum time. But like I said, let's start with Brentford. What did they do so well in this game? What have they been doing so well all season, Critchley?
Well, it's been a magnificent season, as you say. This run has included wins against Man City, Liverpool, West Ham. They've now taken points off the leaders Arsenal. We will talk about that VAR incident in due course, but let's talk about Brentford's performance, because this result now moves them up to 8th. Expected points actually has them even higher in 6th. The best side in the country at current rates. Their form is absolutely magnificent. And this is a team, with the lowest current wage bill in the league according to Capology. And I always think when I look at Brentford's squad, in terms of individual player quality, there's obviously some notable exceptions to this, but if they were to go down, say, I don't think there's that many players that top 6 clubs would want to buy. So it just feels like Thomas Frank has really overperformed with the resources given to him. There's some promising players in there, but they seem to have a plan. They seem to have the right structure. They seem to go into every game with the right intensity as well. And it was the case at the Emirates as well. They were really, really deserving of a point here. And they were extremely hard to break down. That was the main difference. I think they, nullified Arsenal's threats, particularly Martinelli on that left-hand side, really effectively, and were also a threat going the other end, as they so often are. Effective at both ends, unlike a side like Spurs, who, try and shut up shop and cause teams issues on the counter, and as we saw against Man City last weekend, it often works, but it doesn't always. Here's some stats to illustrate their ruthless efficiency. So they were outshot 23-9, but Thomas Frank's men generated more XG than Arsenal, 2 to 1.6. They also clocked more big chances, 3 to 1, according to Opta. And their defensive stats were really, really impressive. It felt like Arsenal were really struggling to create too many clear-cut opportunities. I don't think David Raya had a particularly busy afternoon per se. 10 of Arsenal's 23 efforts came from outside the box. It was Brentford's just discipline, forcing them into pot shots from range. As everyone knows, less likely to score. And it was a really comprehensive defensive performance for them. 6 attempts were blocked. Pinnock and Ayer were great. And Henry and Roslev, who didn't offer that much going forward, but tucked in really effectively. Yeah. Saka, created Trossard's goal, but other than that, probably hasn't been as devilish as he has been across this season in this game. Thank you. And the home side's only effort that registered above 0.1 in terms of XG was their goal. So it was a really, really great display from them. And you picked out Martin Odegaard as well. It felt like he was pushed into that area on the right-hand side of the pitch where he can cause a lot of issues, can combine with Saka really effectively. But in the middle area of the pitch, he was really nullified really effectively as well. So, Chris, I've touched on, Brentford's defending, but particularly you were impressed with the lack of impact from the wide men caused by Brentford.
Yeah, you mentioned it a few times there. It was really impressive how they nullified Arsenal's substantial threat out wide. That's where they do a lot of their good work in the opposition's final third. And Brentford, in order to facilitate this approach, did have to sacrifice a lot of width. Very compact, very organised, and ultimately it was very impressive. They did have to limit the fullbacks' adventurousness, didn't they? I think that Rico Henry and Ruslev didn't create a shooting opportunity for their teammates between them, so pretty indicative of their defence-first approach. But it really stunted Martinelli's efficacy in the final third. Saka still put in a pretty solid performance. It's very hard to limit him on current form, isn't it? But yeah, I was just really impressed with the way Ruslev and I had doubled up on Martinelli. Ultimately, the Brazilian hauled off after, 62 minutes. 0 chances created, 0 take-ons completed. They gave him no room to run into. They really isolated him from the rest of his teammates. Wasn't building up play with Xhaka or Zinchenko. So I thought very smart ploy from Frank. Saka, like I said, a lot harder to contain. But didn't have it all his own way, which he's become accustomed to in recent weeks. So Brentford blocking 3 of his 7 shots. Only 1 of his 5 crosses that he attempted found a teammate, although that was for the goal. So pretty good on that front. And I also wanted to shout out Ivan Toney, who this whole approach does not work without. I mean, he notched up his 14th goal of the season, his 17th goal involvement in total. That's just in 20 Premier League starts. So he's now matched his output from last season, but in 13 fewer appearances, and on the day put up 4 shots, 11 passes into the final third, which is roughly the same as Thomas Partey for Arsenal. So very emblematic of the role he was playing for Brentford in this game, not just the goal getter, but the conduit from midfield to attack as well. Just really, really impressive. 12 out of 14 aerial duels won.
Remarkable.
He ragdolled Saliba all game. It's crazy to think that he's only, 5'10". Worth noting as well that Arteta's men have now conceded from set pieces in each of their last 3 fixtures.
Okay.
So, pretty good in that regard before, so maybe just a minor blip, but something he'll want to keep an eye on for sure. But yeah, going back to Toney, won 5 out of 7 ground duels, won 4 fouls for his teammates. So just awesome in this game, and I don't think they come away with a point or rack up some of the numbers that you mentioned without him. He is their outstanding component. It's not exactly world-class analysis highlighting that, but yeah, a world-class performance nonetheless. Dukes, let's address some of Arsenal's issues then, because the complexion of that City tie has now changed. Now they've dropped, 5 points in the last 2 Premier League games. I mean, it felt like they could afford to slip up against City on Wednesday, had they won those 2. But now it's feeling very high stakes, very make or break. So firstly, I wanted to ask you, do you stick or twist with the lineup that Arteta opted for against Brentford? Because there's been some rumblings among fans, as there normally is, that they'd like to see Trossard come in, they'd like to see Tierney return. What are your thoughts on that?
Personally, I wouldn't change Tierney. I'd consider Trossard because I just don't think Martinelli's come back from the World Cup as frightening as he was beforehand. I think he had a good first couple of games, but his impact in recent weeks has not been as solid. But at the same time, this City defence, it's changed regularly throughout this season. I think you can really get at this City defence, if I'm totally honest. I know Rodri was magnificent yesterday against Aston Villa in a much improved display from them. It was a bit of a dead game after about 45 minutes, to be honest. They were 3-0 up and they coasted through that game. And Jack Grealish looks so much better as well in recent weeks as well. But it just feels like that City defence, I mean, even yesterday it was a 3 at the back, but Bernardo Silva was often dropping in, out of possession into the left-back slot. He also played as a centre-back at times with Laporte moving out there. So you can definitely get at that City defence. And I really think we've seen Bukayo Saka in some of the bigger games this year, most of all against Man United and Luke Shaw, who's having a great season. I thought he was brilliant that day. So I'd stick with the same lineup. The only player I'd potentially change is Martinelli, just because I think he's been slightly off colour in recent weeks. But I feel like his energy, his industry, it could all click in this City game, and I still think Arsenal have a great chance in this game.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Maybe they will treat Arsenal with a bit more respect than they did Aston Villa, but there were moments in that Aston Villa fixture where Leon Bailey really got in between the outside centre-back, let's say, and the central centre-back. But a lot of players returning from injury. Ruben Diaz got a run out. Laporte's getting more minutes under his belt. So I am expecting a bit more defensive solidity the longer the season goes on from Pep's men. Okay, you said it at the start of the show, and we have to touch upon it. VAR's performance this weekend absolutely honking. So we had a goal wrongfully disallowed in the Crystal Palace Brighton game. We had Souček getting away with one big time in the West Ham Chelsea game, and then we had Brentford's goal being allowed to stand here. Quick thoughts on it, because everyone else's have been well documented on the timeline, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much to add. I didn't feel like it was humanly possible to get as many calls wrong in the same weekend, but that is the key point. I don't think there's a problem with the system, it's the people running it. And I do think semi-automated offside calls, which are introduced in the Champions League this year, and I think they're also introduced in Serie A at the moment, will make a massive difference, because they are literally drawing the lines on the wrong people at times. It happened in the Crystal Palace game. In this Arsenal game, didn't spot Norgard. How do you not do that? Even Pinnock was offside as well and interfering with play. So these are massive, massive calls that they're getting wrong, that are changing games, that are changing title races, that are changing players' career, and it's just not good enough.
But let us know your thoughts on Brentford, on Arsenal in the comments below, and make sure you stick around for the next show where we're dissecting Graham Potter's Chelsea woes. Like this video and subscribe to the channel with notifications on if you're new around here, and we'll see you in the next one.